Welcome to the Painting of the Week podcast, where we look at some of the most significant paintings throughout history. Introducing your hosts, Phil Grabsky and Laura Bentham.
Hello, it's that time again. It's time for Painting of the Week. Sit yourself down with a nice cup of tea, cup of coffee, whatever, and you should all know by now, but if you go to seventh-art.com and click on the Painting of the Week button there, you'll see the picture we're about to discuss, or you can go to YouTube. I guess you're already at YouTube, and again, you can listen to us talk whilst looking at the picture. This week, I'm very glad to say we're doing a photograph, and I'll be honest, I'd like to do more on photography, and we've been looking for some time now to do an exhibition on screen on a photographer. But this is a photograph of by Moré Yuko. Now, Moré Yuko is in our recent film Tokyo Stories, and this is actually an image that's in the film. It's called Moré or Leaky. And okay, let's kick off straight away. Laura, I know you've just been to see Tokyo Stories.
Yes.
And, often we're talking about, Rembrandt and Van Gogh and Leonardo and more recently John Singer Sargent and Mary Cassatt. When you see something like this, you can hear people say, hold on, that's just a snap of some red cones and some plastic hanging from the ceiling. How's that art? What was your first reaction?
Okay, so what's your film? Which, of course, was a brilliant film. And as I was watching it, then Moré came on with this Leaky. The whole concept of it, I love. This is right up my street. The fact that she walked into the subway, and apparently in Tokyo they have lots and lots of problems with the groundwater.
Yeah. Well,
I'm assuming every subway does. And then she saw what the workers were doing to create, or just to make sure that none of these leaks hit people at all. And in doing so, she then found that they were inspirational works of art.
Mm.
And then when she took the photos and during your film and what she said, I thought, I find these inspirational works of art. I love this. I love it so much.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's a number of elements to it.
Yeah.
Because I can hear people saying, well, that's not art.
No.
I once did ask a very eminent art historian in a gallery when I was standing in front of a British artist's work that I didn't think was particularly great. And I said, what makes that art? And his response was, well, it's in an art gallery.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm not totally on board that, but I guess you can argue that there's good art and bad art, and anything that is presented to you as art has to be considered as art. I think the thing about this picture, and I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So we went to interview Moré Yuko, and I was with the director, David. The two of us went out to Japan together, and basically the way we work is we work on the questions together, David and I, and then, not always, but on this occasion, he was conducting the interview. So he was actually asking Moré Yuko the questions, and I was sitting to one side just listening. And while I was listening, I was looking, we were in a studio where these paintings, or these photographs rather, were on the wall. And the more I looked at it, the more I appreciated it and liked it. So, number one, don't be too quick to dismiss something that seems a bit unusual. As always with exhibition on screen, we're encouraging you to look.
Yeah.
I'll say a couple of other things. First of all, what I like is, and it's almost better with photography in some ways than paintings, is I like when you got that sense of an artist going out looking for, they're on a search for the image. This isn't a snapshot. She's gone out to this metro. She's looking for this particular type of event. And, she hasn't stood there at random. She's decided, she's actually framed it very carefully. And So there's that element to it, and then the next element to it, which is also worth pointing out, is that actually technically it's also very, very good. There's something else about it too, which we'll come on to.
But also the fact that she's... Okay, so these people, without realising it, have created works of art. Because there's in your film, there are other photographs that she did, and their whole intention is to not allow a drop of water to land on a person. So there's like ones with umbrellas.
Yeah.
And they're taking this all into different locations. Every day I'm imagining the water comes out somewhere different. So they have to try and find things that they can then move it away so someone doesn't slip over. And her looking at that and thinking, actually, these people are artists because what they are creating is quite a nice little invention. Well,
that sense of architecture, engineering, being artistic, absolutely, beautiful.
But do you not also think they look quite Japanese in a funny way? Because they're so precise. Like, I have leaks in my conservatory. Of course I do. And I never know where that rain is coming from. And I just grab all my saucepans and just put them around and dot them about.
I just put all the towels down.
Exactly.
I would never, ever think to do this.
No.
Never.
I wouldn't get a clear umbrella out.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you come to London, if they've got a leak, they're shutting down that station because they wouldn't know what to do. Or they'll just let you walk through a puddle. It's funny. We obviously went out to the metro, the subway in Tokyo, looking for various images. And David, who has the most fantastic eye, he comes out of being an artist. He's a tremendously good photographer, as well as everything else. He walked straight past one of these. I said, David, stop.
So, yeah.
Look. He said, God, I didn't even notice. And it was just a little leak from a little spot on the ceiling, but they had this complicated sequence of plastic, tubing, bucket at the end of it. Absolutely brilliant. And again, it's the kind of thing you might just walk by without looking at. So a photographer, like we do as filmmakers when we focus your eye on certain details, this photographer said, hold on a second.
Yeah.
In your day-to-day life, there are things to appreciate. And it is, as you say, it's actually, and this is a series.
Yes.
So I know that you'd mentioned that this series of paintings, because I think she's been doing this from like 2009.
Yeah. And
then she's exhibited the series of photographs. You mentioned in London in 2017.
Well, she then actually did an installation based on what she'd seen.
Yeah.
So she then took it to a completely different level.
Yeah.
She also did a little thing where she kind of put things around and tried to get members of the public to make some things as well. I really loved the fact that it was really inclusive.
Yeah.
But she just finds objects where she was in London and started to make her own and got really, really into the noises, the sounds of it all, the rhythms of the water, how the weight of the water, gravity, everything.
Because she says in the film, doesn't she, that the gallery was very wet until she got it all working. Because I know she exhibited it all in Sydney,
right? And
I just read very recently that I think she's going to be the Japanese artist at the Venice Biennale of 2024.
Amazing. Have to go there, Phil.
Oh, Venice Biennale. It's such fun. Contemporary art can be very funny. So she's definitely on the rise, very popular.
She's really...
And on all these, I keep calling them paintings, I can't help myself.
No.
But all these photographs are, you can just stand and look at them. And
what I love though is that every single day she might have walked around and found something different. And then when she put it into her own installation, she didn't know what she was going to achieve. So as an artist, I think that's a really lovely thing. Like you were saying about, Vermeer, Leonardo, they would have had to have seen their painting. They knew what they were going to paint. They knew what expressions they were going to have on the faces and everything. they weren't worried about sounds and things like that. So she's comes to her installation, has no idea how it's going to end, how it's going to start. It's fun.
But that's pretty unusual, though, isn't it? That, I mean,
Yeah.
it starts with the photograph. It starts
Yeah.
with her going out,
Yeah.
then the photograph, and then she builds her own installation.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone's not clear what we mean, in a gallery, she creates this scene, not this specific scene, but a scene
No.
where there is a pretend leak, if you like, from the ceiling or from somewhere, and then there are plastic tubes and plastic and buckets and
Wellington boots.
And listen, I can quite understand if somebody says, you know what, I'd rather look at a Leonardo or Rembrandt, but it's it's fun. She's somebody who doesn't. On the one hand, she takes her art very seriously. She's a serious artist, but there's also an element of fun about it. And we you've got to be careful when you start talking about national traits. But like you were saying, that somehow it feels Japanese. I'm not sure. I don't know whether you would get a British photographer, with a series of photographs on the London Underground of, I don't know, it wouldn't necessarily be this type of thing, but of, I don't know, things not working probably.
No, but would you have umbrellas hanging up with plastic coming down?
No, they
wouldn't.
wouldn't. They wouldn't do it like this. You can feel the manual labour involved in this. And the other thing, when you go to Tokyo, and I actually think this is actually very sensible. For instance, when I turned up at Tokyo airport and was directed to take the COVID, or do all the COVID paperwork, there's not, if you turn up in London Heathrow, there'll be nobody there. There might be one sign. Tokyo, they've got like 15 people. Every 10 metres, every 20 metres, someone's pointing you.
Right.
If you see roadworks, there'll be like 5 people directing you onto the road, another one stay on the road, another one, they're not seeking to replace everybody or...
No.
So you can feel that there's something like this wasn't done by one person, but it was probably done by 10.
Exactly.
And, they're not crappy old cones, all broken up and chewed up and, the signs. I mean, they're all new cones, new buckets, new plastic, new signs. I don't know, it's just, there is something about it which is Japanese.
I was wondering, sorry Phil, do you think now the staff are aware of her work? Because now I was wondering afterwards, thinking, do they now, when they are trying to redirect their leaks, think, maybe we'll take this to a different level and we will create a really complex piece just in case it will then, become another photo or someone actually might...
So there'll be an interesting...
want to buy it.
That's a really interesting point. So what would happen if one of them from the subway went to her installation and took a picture of it and then made an art, then sold that as an artwork? Would she claim breach of copyright? Or could the people who built this, who put this together, like this particular photograph, could they say, hold on a minute, that's our artwork and you're exploiting it, you're in breach of copyright? The likelihood is that there's been no contact.
Okay.
I mean, it would be nice to think that
Yeah.
she showed these pictures and invited the people along. I didn't ask that question, actually. I mean, if she's presenting this as an artwork, you'd think that she would talk to the artist behind it.
But also what's so lovely is that, I think I said this to you before, how many people say, oh, you know, I'm really not artistic, there's no way I could ever do anything artistic. And then you find yourself in a series of photographs, and that is then, oh, actually, maybe I am quite artistic.
Well,
without knowing it.
The other thing about this, and I do suggest people look at the series, as many of them that are online, because when I started looking at this while the interview was going on, I started to realise that actually the colours involved are really interesting. And I asked her about this afterwards, and I'll tell you her answer in a second. But so primary colours, red, blue and green. And you've got complementary colours, so red and green, blue and orange. Although I often, in my own mind, I often think blue and yellow. So when you look at Impressionist works, I mean, they're totally across colour theory. You look at Impressionist artworks, there's so much use of blue contrasting with yellow, or sometimes blue contrasting with green. Certainly blue with orange, or blue with yellow, and red and green. And so when you look at this, and of course, who was it? Aristotle, I think he said, if you've got one colour and you lay it against another colour, then in your brain is a third colour. It's that thing of thesis and antithesis creating synthesis. Anyway, the way our brain works is we put things together and we create something new. So what I'm saying here is that if you look at this again from a colour point of view, everything's kind of grey and white. And you just got these dots of colour. So you've got the circle of red.
Yeah.
And then you've got the blue buckets. This isn't the same if they're black buckets.
No.
Which it probably would be if it was British. And both buckets are blue, one slightly lighter than the other. Even the chain, it's not a dingy grey, it's black and yellow, and that yellow zings, it really pings at you. But if you keep looking, it's really interesting, because on the back reflection, anyway, I'll tell you what she says in a minute. On the back reflection, on the left in the window, you've got more yellow, and you've even got a bit of green top right. So if you're talking, so these circles of colour make this, and part of the appeal of a Van Gogh, for example, is that visceral enjoyment of the colour, plus you understand immediately what you're seeing. Well, it's kind of the same here. It's pleasurable because of the colour, and you understand, well, do you understand? You kind of get the idea. I mean, I suppose you wouldn't necessarily know it was water. You might be thinking it's dust or that's coming down that plastic. But anyway, I said to her after the interview, we were still on camera, I said, in many of these photographs, there are these little dots of red and blue and green, and have you introduced that in the post-production process? Did you go looking for that?
Okay, yeah.
And she laughed and she said, purely accidental.
Right.
Now, I think that artists spot those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think that, I bet she's got plenty of pictures of this type of thing, where, as I say, the buckets are black and the cones are different colours, and,
But also it's what makes, you're a photographer, Phil. You could have taken that photo at any angle, and the other ones that are in your film as well, the same with the umbrellas, and there's loads of reflections and things like that. So actually, that is where then she is an artist.
Yeah.
To interpret that, kind of sculpture.
Yeah.
And the way she's done it against those windows, and I love those black and white photos in the background. I have no idea what that is all about, I'm assuming. Do you have any idea?
Well, it's odd, isn't it? I mean, it's like they're basically empty. It's almost like, is that like where they put art?
I don't know. I really love it though. But the more I now think about what we were saying about, the people that are doing the leaks of the artist, now I think, oh no, Moré is the artist because of the way she's taken that photo with the yellow reflection in the window.
And, it's very carefully framed. That cone on the left.
Yes.
She's cut that in half, either in the original photograph or in the printing, because then that blocks that side.
Yeah.
There's no light, you don't see her on the other side, so your eye stops there. Whereas on the right-hand side, she's left some space, so your eye goes round it, and actually then is drawn to those window displays. I assume this is on the top floor,
right,
of the subway, and therefore in there, I don't know what. I mean, there's art everywhere in Tokyo. We've talked about this before. It's the most amazing place. Every wall covering has got something on it.
Right, yeah.
So here, they look like they don't even look Japanese, do they? They're like
this is little black and
strange.
White. Yeah, little photos. Maybe someone can enlighten us and let us know.
The other thing I think is interesting is that there's no people, which I think I don't know whether it necessarily would not be as good with people. I don't know.
When she's focused totally on the water leak, then it
would be
what
distracting,
they've
wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes, although that's where she's the photographer.
Yeah.
Because now I thought about it, I'm like, is it their work of art? But not really now, because of the way she's taken those photos. And I truly, really, really loved it in the film.
The film's, I really like the film because
Yeah.
you've got so many artists that we couldn't really do an entire exhibition on screen about, to be fair.
No.
Not because they don't deserve it, but because, we would struggle so much to get an audience out for an artist from Japan that people have never heard of.
Right, yeah.
But all of them in the film, they're so enthusiastic and so energetic and so innovative. There's one guy in there who does these photo montages which are utterly stupendous. And I'd have one of those on my wall in a shot.
Is that the one that cuts all the tiny little pieces?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. No, I really love that.
And he was so nice when we met him to interview him.
That took some work.
Oh, thousands and thousands of photographs, and he's cutting them out and then creating this in the one that's in the film, this vision of Tokyo.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Some fabulous artists.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I think it's fair to say Japanese artists are engaging more and more, travelling more and more internationally, getting more and more of an international reputation, not just, Yoko Ono was a famous artist 30 years ago, but obviously by association with John Lennon. I think we'll see the works of people like Moré, Yuko and others in British galleries more, British museums and galleries more and more, I'm sure. And she was a tremendously nice person. Oh, sometimes you just know that somebody's really very, very nice and absolutely loves what she does.
Yeah, well, it's enthusiasm, isn't it?
Yeah, enthusiasm.
That's everything. That really is.
So
go to Tokyo as well.
So next time, art. I'm not going to lecture anybody here, but that's what makes art so exciting. Is that it's not just the great masters and the paintings of the Mona Lisa and Girl with a Pearl Earring, but it's
anyone could do it.
Well,
next time we have a leak.
I guess the point of this is don't dismiss something that you don't understand the first time.
No.
And also, I really, really, it's something I want to do more of is just look at the great photographers. There's so much great photography going on, and when 30 years ago when I was making films, it was like we had the independent newspaper where photography was such an essential part of it, and there were fantastic photographs, and that all kind of got squeezed out, unfortunately. And I don't think photography or photographs get the respect or the publicity that they're due.
Yeah, I think
deserve.
what we were saying the other day, though, once you capture that moment, as a photographer, you just must, every time be like, this is the one, this is the picture. And now, of course, it's so different as well, because people never before would even put out a blurry picture and things like that, but people do some really unusual things now, and it's acceptable and actually loved. So that's quite nice. I can't wait to do photography. I can't wait for you to find some photographers to talk about, because I love all that sort of thing.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's Moré Yuko, and she is in our Tokyo Stories, which I thoroughly recommend people see. And if you go to 7th-art.com, well, it's still in the cinemas. It'll be available on the website in a few weeks' time. I guess in the meantime, if you're interested in Japan, Van Gogh in Japan is another film of ours which looks at the influence that Japanese art had on Van Gogh and 19th century painters as a whole. And we'll be back soon. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Arigato.
Thank you for listening to the Painting of the Week podcast. For more information, please visit our website at 7th-art.com or contact us by emailing info@7th-art.com. See you next time.